We are diving deep into the intricate machinery of the soul, and our guide is Milan Kundera's extraordinary 1984 novel, The Unbearable Lightness of Being.
And we're approaching it exactly like that, as a system. Kundera really constructed this novel as a kind of philosophical engine. He uses the chaos of human life. And, I mean, the terrifying chaos of the 1968 Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia to test two opposing forces.
Weight and lightness.
Weight and lightness, exactly.
So our mission today is to show you exactly how he builds that case. This isn't just about, literary appreciation. It's really about understanding a framework for human existence. We're going to trace these forces through the lives of four, I think, unforgettable characters.
We have Thomas, the brilliant surgeon who just wants to be free of all constraints. Then there's Teresa, a photographer who is desperate for meaning, for destiny.
And Sabina's the painter. Her whole life is this magnificent aesthetic act of betrayal.
And finally, Franz, the earnest professor who's just obsessed with finding a grand political cause. Their lives really give us the ultimate deep dive into why we make the choices we do.
Okay, so let's unpack this. To start with the title, we have to start with the philosophical foundation that Kundera uses to define weight. And, well, you can't get much heavier than Nietzsche, can you?
You absolutely cannot. Kundera, he establishes his definition of weight straight from Nietzsche's most crushing doctrine, the eternal return.
The eternal return.
Nietzsche himself called it das schwerste Gewicht, heaviest of burdens.
But hold on a second. If we look at that concept, that every single thing we do, every joy, every pain has to recur ad infinitum, doesn't that actually make life feel more significant, more real?
It does, but here's the crucial part. It also makes it irredeemable. If everything happens again and again, eternally, then every single choice, every mistake carries an unbearable responsibility. The consequence of that repetition is that life becomes solid. It's permanent. And your errors are just irreversible. That permanence is what makes life heavy.
So the opposite, the lightness, must come from the non-existence of that return.
Right.
If our life just disappears once and for all, if it's just a shadow, like Kundera says, without weight, dead in advance, then everything is permissible.
Exactly. There's no accountability to a future version of you because there isn't one. And this leads to this profound political observation he makes. He points out that historians looking back at, say, the French Revolution, are less critical of the bloody years because those events won't return. They've become lighter than feathers, frightening no one. In a world without recurrence, everything is pardoned in advance, and therefore everything's cynically permitted.
That's a terrifying form of freedom. It sounds like the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card, though. If the burden crushes us, then lightness allows us to just sort of float.
But he suggests that this floating leaves us, I think his words are only half real. Our movements are as free as they are insignificant. It's not the grand liberation you might hope for.
Which brings us to love and destiny and choice.
Exactly. How do we choose which path to take? Kundera uses Beethoven's motif, der schwer gefasste Entschluss, the difficult or heavy resolution. It's associated with the voice of fate. Es muss sein.
It must be so.
It must be so. Necessity, weight, value, they're all bound together in that single idea.
So if you believe in weight, you believe in destiny. You believe you are meant to be where you are. But Thomas, our main character, he embodies the lightness of pure chance. His motto is basically, es konnte anders sein.
It could just as well be otherwise. And this isn't just some abstract philosophy for him. He explicitly says his entire relationship with Teresa, the woman who eventually grounds him, wasn't destiny.
No.
It was, he says, 6 chance happenings, 6 fortuities, a missed train, a hotel, a medical issue, all just random events that brought them together. For him, there's no grand design. Which,
of course, gives him the perfect philosophical cover to live a life of total lightness in his relationships. He is desperate to avoid the burden of a shared life.
Completely. He even devised this structure he called erotic friendship. The whole system was a compromise between his fear of women, or rather his fear of their emotional claim on him, and his desire.
And the main rule was simple. Sentimentality has no place.
He was so meticulous to keep his life free of women with what he called psychological suitcases, long-term commitment. He had the rule of threes.
The rule of threes, right.
A truly practical philosophy. Either see a woman 3 times in quick succession and then never again, or your meetings have to be separated by at least 3 weeks.
But the most telling detail for me is his craving to be alone afterwards. He found waking in the middle of the night at the side of an alien body distasteful.
Yes.
I have to pause here. We're calling this philosophical lightness, but I mean, Is this really some profound system, or is it just an incredibly high-minded excuse for emotional cowardice? It sounds like he's just cloaking it all in Nietzsche.
That is the novel's central tension. It's a brilliant question. For Thomas, the justification is intellectual. He claims his womanizing is a quest for knowledge, for possession of the world. We'll get to that.
But for Teresa, his lightness is just pure trauma.
Pure trauma, because she is searching for the precise opposite. For weight, for uniqueness, for being irreplaceable. When she shows up in Prague with her heavy suitcase, she's driven by this belief that their meeting had to be destined.
The total opposite of his fortuity.
Her need for that weight comes from this really painful history with lightness. She was fleeing her mother's world, a world where the body had absolutely no value. Her mother wouldn't even let her lock the bathroom door.
Right, because nakedness made all women identical, like a concentration camp uniformity.
And so she comes to Tomas hoping he will see her body as unique, irreplaceable, as something that makes her real.
So when he continues his erotic friendships, he is literally pushing her back into that anonymous, weightless world she fought so hard to escape.
And her suffering manifests in these incredible, disturbing dreams. She has that recurring dream about the execution in the swimming pool,
where Tomas is supervising.
He's supervising, shooting naked women who are, and this is the key part, overjoyed by their sameness.
That detail is so chilling. The women are happy to be interchangeable while she's terrified of it. Her dream is her soul accusing him of reducing her to just another body.
And that pain forces her to try to imitate him, to try and embrace lightness herself. She experiments with flirtation, treating it like a field of research, but her body just isn't capable of it.
This is that body-soul duality he writes about. Her attempts at infidelity, her body betrays her will. The excitement she feels is precisely because her body is acting against its will. The soul is just watching, almost thrilled by this rebellion. She's literally split in two.
That dual horror is captured in that striking image of loneliness. She sits in that working-class bathroom trying to find the absolute extreme of humiliation and sees the toilet not as a fixture, but as the enlarged end of a sewer pipe.
She's overwhelmed by grief, just trying to find the maximum possible weight in shame.
Only to realize that shame is just a fleeting moment in her solitary body.
Wow. Okay, that psychological weight is crippling. But let's zoom out, because Kundera doesn't just keep this crisis in the bedroom. He shows how this same philosophical war impacts culture, specifically through his brilliant concept of kitsch.
Right, moving from the intimate body to the collective body. And for Kundera, kitsch is so much more than just, bad taste or sentimentality. It is the aesthetic ideal of the categorical agreement with being.
Meaning it wants to deny anything ugly or unacceptable about life.
Exactly. Which brings us to probably his most famous and controversial definition, the denial of shit.
Right.
Kitsch is the absolute denial of shit, which he says is the primary metaphysical objection to creation. If we lock the bathroom door, we're denying a biological truth. If man has intestines and God made man in his image, then either God has intestines or man is not like him. Kitsch exists to sweep that reality under the rug.
So kitsch is basically a lie we all agree to tell ourselves to make life seem beautiful and simple. And this leads to his idea of the second tier.
Yes. The first tier is simple, honest, emotion-like seeing kids running on the grass. The second tier, that's the meta-emotion. It's the self-satisfied feeling of how nice to be moved together with all mankind by children running on the grass.
It's that collective consensus, that shared easy sentiment. That's what makes it kitsch.
And it very quickly becomes the language of politics, of authority.
Which is where Sabina, the painter, comes in. She stands in total opposition to this. Her whole life is about breaking ranks with the second tier. Her defining action is betrayal.
For Sabina, betrayal meant breaking ranks and going off into the unknown, and she found that magnificent. Her art was all about demolishing the scenery, the conventional expectations, to find something raw and true.
Her famous symbol, the black bowler hat, illustrates this perfectly. For her and Tomas, when she wore it with lingerie, it was this complex symbol of erotic humiliation and power. It excited them both.
But when she wears it later for her partner, Franz, he just doesn't get it. For him, it's an incomprehensible gesture. It makes him uncomfortable because it lacks any meaning within his grand, sentimental view of the world.
And Franz himself embodies the political expression of kitsch. He yearns for what Kundera calls the Grand March, this splendid, idealized march toward brotherhood, justice, ever onward.
His desire to participate in political drama, to suffer for a cause, it's a complete romanticization. It's political kitsch Fueled by that collective second terror, he wanted to feel the weight of history, the Esma sign of revolution.
But the reality of history, especially the Soviet invasion, is stripped of that romantic weight almost immediately. Teresa risks her life taking these incredible photographs of the tanks, right? Hoping to preserve the face of violence. But what happens to them?
They were deemed out of date in Switzerland within days. The gravity of the tragedy was just trivialized by the swift light speed of the Western media cycle. Meanwhile, the actual people resisting, like Thomas, they're relieved of their positions and become window washers, boilermen. The struggle wasn't grand, it was humiliatingly small.
And France's own quest for that political weight, it ends in this tragicomic futility when he joins the march on Cambodia.
It's a perfect metaphor. The Grand March shrinks down to a small platform against borders of silence. The organizers realize their choice isn't between glorious action and just play acting, but between play acting and no action at all.
The weight of history just evaporates into a light, meaningless gesture. So this brings us back to Tomas's final reckoning. When he's forced out of medicine, he tries to escape that political trap by voluntarily embracing lightness. He becomes a window washer.
That was his grand holiday. But Kundera reveals his true internal Esmus saying was always surgery. He loved that brief but intense feeling of blasphemy from cutting into God's mechanism, the human body. That was his heavy imperative.
And what about all the womanizing? That seemed like pure lightness.
Well, Kundera reframes it. He argues it was this epic desire for possession of the world. Tomas wasn't seeking pleasure, he was seeking knowledge. He wanted to find that 1/1,000,000th part dissimilarity in each woman, using his imaginary scalpel to slit open the body of the world.
Yet for all that searching, for all that knowledge, none of those women entered what the novel calls his poetic memory.
No, that part of his brain, the part that records what charms us and gives life its weight, it belonged entirely to Teresa. He remembered the mechanics of his encounters, but his poetic memory held only one image of her. Returning home with a dying crow wrapped in a red scarf, that fleeting, accidental image was the only thing that stuck.
And Sabina, too, finds an ultimate destination for lightness. When her cycle of magnificent betrayals just runs out of road, when there's nothing left to betray, she's left with emptiness.
The unbearable lightness of being?
She ends up melancholy, afraid of death, specifically of being covered by a heavy stone that would finally tell her, stay where you are. The very weight she tried so hard to escape is what she misses in oblivion.
And that contrast leads to the ultimate emotional pivot for Tomas. He abandons his ideal, his dream woman, his intellectual ismacene of love. He goes back to Teresa, the woman born of 6 laughable fortuities.
And this choice isn't driven by fate. It's driven by compassion. Susette.
Yes, that amazing Czech word. It means co-feeling. It's the acknowledgement of her suffering, the recognition of their shared humanity, and that compassion brings a totally new kind of weight into their lives.
His return to her, even knowing they'll just become isolated farm workers, it defines their final, quiet days.
That shared existence becomes the novel's idol, and in that piece, that simple, recurring rhythm of life, Teresa has the final realization. Happiness is the longing for repetition.
Which is the great irony of the novel. She finds happiness by embracing the very thing Nietzsche called the heaviest burden, repetition. Their life moves from a straight, adventurous line to a comforting, necessary circle.
And kitsch, as Kundera reminds us, is just the stopover between being and oblivion. Their legacy, like Franz's simplified grave inscription, a return after long wanderings, will become a collective, sentimental memory.
So our central mission was to see how this philosophical war between necessity and chance shapes everything: love, politics, identity. And what Kundera seems to suggest is that true value, the true weight, isn't in destiny or grand historical action.
No, it's found in the private, accidental moments of compassion that disrupt our self-imposed lightness.
Which brings us back to where we started, and our final provocative thought for you. If the ultimate, inescapable weight of life comes from the things we cannot choose, our bodies, where we're born, our biological end, and if everything we build, our legacies, are all destined to be packaged up as kitsch anyway, does the meaning of our lives then reside only in the parts that are purely accidental, temporary, and utterly untranslatable to others? Does the final victory truly belong to that unbearable lightness? Something to ponder. We'll see you next time.